Linda Robertson never expected that her old sewing kit would save the lives of her shipwrecked family, and she certainly didn't anticipate that another of her improvised survival strategies would find its way into an SAS training manual. But that was before a pod of orcas delivered 3 sledgehammer blows to the 43 FT schooner that she and her family were sailing around the world. As the killer whales smashed into the hull, splintering the wood, the boat rose out of the waves, catapulting the Robertsons across the cabin. Linda's husband, Dougal, a master mariner turned farmer, attempted to plug with a pillow. But just 3 minutes later, Lucette, the vessel the Robertsons had sold their Staffordshire farm to buy, had sunk, leaving 4 adults and 2 children adrift on a small life raft in a remote part of the Pacific Ocean. They were Dougal and Linda, their 18-year-old son Douglas, their 12-year-old twins, Sandy and Neil, and Robin Williams, a student hitchhiker they had picked up in Panama. Their daughter Anne, 19, had remained in the Bahamas 5 months earlier, a year into the family's voyage round the world. When Lucette sank at 10 a.m. on June 15, 1972, the family were 200 miles west of the Galapagos, with no way of summoning help. The story of how they survived 38 days at sea, including 17 days in a small life raft and a further 3 weeks in a shallow 3-man dinghy, became the stuff of nautical legend, which is about to be marked with an exhibition at the National Maritime Museum. On July 22nd at 5:30 p.m., they were finally rescued by a Japanese fishing trawler, the Toka Maru 2, whose crew had spotted their distress flare. An earlier ship, which passed by on day 6, had failed to see them. For the past 5 decades, this drama has been told from Dougal's point of view. He wrote a best-selling memoir, Survive the Savage Sea, based on his captain's logbook, and in 1992, it was made into a film starring Ali MacGraw in Linda's role. But their eldest son has always felt that neither gave sufficient credit to the contribution made by his selfless mother, a former nurse. Dougal, he recalls, while he led strategically, she led operationally. Dad was a Captain Bligh tyrant, and you couldn't have got a better man for the job to ensure we survived. He was as hard to live with as he was tough and brave. He said he would not rest until he got us on a steamer home. While Dougal and Douglas focused on inflating the life raft for 6 hours a day by mouth, a lip-blistering job, and steering north using an improvised sail, it was Linda who kept spirits high, treating sores with turtle oil and despair with love. The problem with mothers is that because their care is constant, they go unappreciated. But my mom was an unsung hero, Douglas says proudly. When the boat sank, Linda was still wearing her nightdress. She grabbed a few supplies and the younger boys, Dougal and Douglas. The family had just enough time to inflate the rubber life raft. Douglas, now 68 and an accountant, believed he was about to be eaten alive. I saw killer whales with teeth, and I thought, this is how I am going to die. I was in the water fixing the raft and kept feeling for my legs. I'd read that if your legs are bitten off by a shark, you don't feel it. But as the lost Lucette plunged deeper into the ocean, life-saving flotsam began to appear. The most valuable item that bobbed to the surface was my mother's sewing basket. It contained a 6-inch long piece of copper wire. I don't know where the hell she got it from, or how it ended up in her sewing basket. But we were able to use it to connect fish hooks to the end of a paddle, says Douglas. This enabled them to catch mahi-mahi, also known as dorado, and 13 sea turtles. They also enjoyed the bounty of flying fish. Linda would later sew together parts of the abandoned life raft to make protective capes after the family's clothes disintegrated following constant immersion in salt water. I always remember the twins crying, and my mom putting her arms around them and saying, "Don't be frightened." They said they weren't crying because they were frightened, but because we had lost Lucette. She had been our home. She'd kept us safe and provided us with shelter, and now we'd lost her. But the depression was countered with the excitement that we were still alive, and all together. Together with the supplies grabbed by Linda, the group had 6 lemons, 10 oranges, a tin of biscuits, a bag of onions, and half a pound of glucose sweets. Most worryingly, they only had sufficient water for 10 days. It was Linda Robertson's enterprising solution to the lack of water that kept the family alive. But it wasn't until an episode of Bear Grylls' ITV show, Mission Survive, 6 years ago, that her contribution to the canon of survival techniques finally achieved recognition. We had only dirty water in the bottom of the life raft, and we were up to our chests in this mix of turtle blood and seawater, explains Douglas. Mum said drinking it would kill us, but she explained that we could absorb it through our bowel without being poisoned, as it would not have to go through the digestive system. So I made a tube from a bit of flotsam, the schooner's ladder, and we were able to administer the rehydration enemas that kept us alive. Bear Grylls tried out this approach on TV and explained that the SAS had adopted it as an important survival method in their training manual. It was Linda. The idea was all hers, says Douglas. After the inflatable life raft grew too leaky to be safe, the family abandoned it for the 9-feet-long Edna Mare, a vessel so small that with everyone aboard, only 6 inches of the boat remained above the waterline. They were aboard it when they were rescued, and it is now part of the permanent collection at the National Maritime Museum Cornwall, which houses artifacts from the Robertson family's ordeal. After their rescue, Linda and Dougal split up. My mother never stopped loving my father, says Douglas. But they could never forgive each other for what happened on the Lucette and for putting our lives in danger. It was a dynamic they couldn't get over. Dougal bought another yacht and went to live in the Mediterranean. Linda went back to farming, on land bought for £20,000 by her estranged husband with proceeds from his book. He died from cancer at the age of 67. For the last 3 years of his life, she nursed him at their daughter Anne's house in London. Linda died in 1998 at the age of 79. Only now, in late middle age himself, does Douglas feel he is truly aware of the extent of his mother's sacrifice. Recounting her unerring support clearly moves him. There was one dry point in the center of the life raft, he says quietly. My mother often said to me, "You take my turn." And I took her turn because I was a selfish young man and, unlike my mother, didn't know how to be tough. I see the same strength in my sister Anne. The 50th anniversary of the family's rescue is being celebrated by the permanent installation of a video interview with Douglas and other family members at the National Maritime Museum Cornwall. And in London, it is being marked by an exhibition by renowned contemporary artist Nina Katchadourian, whose mother read her the story of the Robertsons when she was just 7 years old. I have been fixated on this story since childhood, says Nina. Her 2-room artwork, entitled To Feel Something That Was Not of Our World, invites viewers into an exhibition of videos, sculptures and drawings, archival press materials, artifact replicas and excerpts from 50 hours of video recordings with Douglas over 38 days, one for every day of the family's shipwreck. Living through something like that makes you understand that nothing is lost until it's lost. You can always find a way to improve any situation in which you find yourself, insists Douglas. It's a message learnt directly from his inspirational mother,